Hi, friends. I'm going to talk about something today that is very different than what I normally share with you. I am an RN and I'm also a massage therapist. And as an RN, I know science and medical community and the body. And as a massage therapist, so that's Western medicine, is very scientific, it's very analytical, it's very factual. And then as a massage therapist, I know Eastern medicine, meridian, chakras, energies, different kinds of therapies for the body. I know about Reiki and cranial sacral and how the body flows, those kind of things. So as with that, I can see both sides. And I think it's a good mix because a lot of times as a nurse, I would go right to medical. And as medical wouldn't work for me, my daughter got strep, had allergies to antibiotics. I had to find a way to cure her without antibiotics. My daughter had a rollover, crushed her arm, couldn't have surgery because of the millions of microfractures. I had to learn about herb for that. There's been many times where medical science could not fix the thing that was wrong with my kids. So I had to turn to Eastern medicine and herbs and energies and things like that. So as I went through my massage and cranial sacral training, I learned a lot. I had a lot of early surgeries. I cut my finger off when I was 2, and I had several different surgeries trying to sew it back on, then grow skin grafts, and then finally removal, and had my arm sewn into my finger sewn into my gut, and had a body cast on. So I had a lot of trauma, early trauma. I hunch kind of like a turtle in its shell because I had the body cast inched down, and so I always kind of slouch because of that body cast. The way I sleep still is different because of the body cast. I couldn't sleep normally with that on. And so that affected a lot in my life. And as I started going through the massage training and having cranial sacral done, something happened that I learned about called unwinding. And when you go through a trauma, your body stores that trauma. And that's why a lot of times triggers will happen. So say you were in a car accident and at the time you were eating French fries and a red car ran a stop sign and it hit your car and you were young and there was a song playing on the radio and your mother was hurt and unconscious and bleeding. So every time you smell French fries, you get triggered back to a panic and you don't know why. You don't remember what's triggering that. Or every time you see a red car, you kind of get anxious and you're not quite sure. Or you hear a song and you cry when you hear the song and you don't understand it and you don't know why. Everything is stored in our bodies. And if we don't deal with it and we don't get rid of that trauma somehow in our body or our emotions, it can be triggered by other things. And so as I was doing my training, I learned about a technique called unwinding, that you can unwind a trauma that has been stored and go backwards through it. So like there's a movie, I think it's Horse Whisperers or something, where the girl falls and she's on a horse and they take her at the end and they put her back on the horse and then they make the horse go backwards and stand up with her on it, going backwards through the trauma. And so it's a technique called unwinding. So as I was doing that, learning to do cranial and energy releasing and things like that, I learned a few things about word association and a therapy called tapping. Now, years ago, somebody tried to do tapping with me, and I thought it was crazy. I was like, what are these people doing? I didn't see any benefits from it. I just thought they were crazy. They just tapped different spots on the body, and I was like, this is really crazy. I didn't see any benefits to it. But I understood once I became a massage therapist, that the points that they were tapping were points on the meridians. They were ending points, beginning points for the different meridians in your body. So like your kidney has different energy points that run through your body for your kidneys. And then there's different points on your body that run for your heart and your lungs and things like that. And I also learned that different energies can be stored in different parts of the body. So when we are experiencing grief, it's hard to breathe. It's oftentimes you can't get your breath. So grief is often stored in the lungs. When you're nervous, you need to pee. So fear is stored in the kidneys. And that's why we need to urinate when we're scared, or kids wet themselves when they're scared. Anger is often stored in the gallbladder. That's why we say we're galled by something or something somebody did. So those emotions are stored where we say. So like if I say, oh, she's such a pain in the neck, this person. When I say that, I'm causing that energy to be stored in my neck. When I say, I just need a break, we can cause ourselves a little break to get the break that we think we need. What we say gives us away is what I like to say to people. And so everybody I've ever met that says, God, I was so galled that she did that, or I'm so galled when he did that, they have had their gallbladder out because they store their gall in their gallbladder and they put that energy there. So, one time my sister was visiting somebody and they were in the hospital and they had a broken neck. And this woman was saying, I just needed a little break. They were such a pain in my neck. And she goes, literally, you just said they're a pain in my neck and I need a break. And you are in the hospital with a broken neck. And I have seen this over and over and over in my life where people will say something and then they create it. I have a family member who always says, are there any fires for us to put out? Are there any fires today? He has had 3 house fires. And his wife's like, would you stop saying that? And I try to tell him, you're creating that for yourself. You got to stop saying, are there any fires for me to put out? So what we say has power and it has energy and it creates. So this kind of all goes together. What I'm getting to is a tapping video about how to tap the meridians and get it out. But I'm explaining for newbies what it is and how it works and that kind of thing. So bear with me because it is kind of a long video. But I had somebody ask me to explain it so that they could watch it because we didn't have time to do it. She's got 7, 8 little kids and just asked me to make a video about it. And I never have because it does sound crazy to people who are only scientific and they are very left brain and they don't know the other side of it. If you've always turned to medicine, it's very hard for you, Western medicine, to look at Eastern medicine and think it has value because we're not trained that way in our country. So several times I've had people say, I had to learn about grapefruit seed extract and olive leaf extract and oregano and colloidal silver and all of these thieves oil, all of these things that are like natural antibiotics that don't kill your natural flora because of children with allergies to antibiotics. So I was kind of forced to look for things that were not naturally the go-to thing for someone who is in the medical profession. But then I saw them working so well and it didn't cause the natural flora to die off, so that I started, looking more when I had to figure something out. I would go to the doctors and hospitals and my scientific training and like burns and things like that. And I know what they use for burns. And I have found that certain things that they do work okay. And some oils work better, like tea tree oil works really better. I had a daughter that had a pressure cooker explode. And so I learned about tea tree and lavender oil and had to do some research to figure out what the best way to heal those bad burns were. So throughout my life, I think God has given me the opportunity to learn these things that I normally wouldn't have gone to because medical science did not have a better answer for that situation. So with that, just listen and let me explain how this works, and you can take it or leave it. It really doesn't matter to me because it's not hurting me in any way, shape, or form if you believe me or you don't believe me. And it could just help you if you can't find an answer anywhere else. This might help you get rid of the emotions that are stuck from those traumatic events. So after that first tapping experience that I had, I thought it was nuts, and I didn't give it any credence. I didn't study it. I didn't have anything to do with it. And I was working on my mother's history, and I was staying at my sister's house because there was literally 6 pallets full of filing cabinets and papers that were as tall as I am. And I had to sort through them because she would save every scrap of paper, and then she would put pictures, family pictures and histories and things in these magazines and stuff. So we had to flip through everything, every file, every magazine and everything to find the gems that were amongst all the garbage. So I spent a couple of months all day, every day going through all of this stuff. And I had asked my family members for some help, and I had a hard time getting them to come. They didn't want to deal with all of that kind of thing. So every night when I was at her house, I would have to have this ice cream concoction. I would crave it, just crave it. And it was mint ice cream with chocolate chips or some kind of chocolate through it. And junior mints, frozen junior mints, I'd put that on top, and then some kind of a nut and a banana. Literally, I had to have that mixture every single night. When I was working, I was just craving it, and I was like, I'm craving it. I must need it. So I was eating this bowl of ice cream every night while I was working on this project at my sister's house because I live far away, and all the stuff, my mother's stuff, was near her house. So she let me stay there and sort through this, and she would help when she could. But, other family members came for an hour or two. Some of them never came. Some of them came for an hour or two. Some of them helped maybe 1 or 2 days, and then my sister let me stay there, and she helped a little bit more. So I would have this ice cream and eat it every night. And I was telling her, this is so crazy that I'm eating this ice cream every night. I'm not quite sure why. And I came home from that, and she said, I found something today that I think would help you. And she sent me this article that she had read. And it was a woman who had an addiction to ice cream, chocolate covered ice cream popsicle things. And she went to a tapping therapist, somebody who did tapping, and she went to this therapist, and the therapist said, she said, bring in some ice cream with you when you come, and we'll work on it. So she opened the ice cream and held it and said, oh, now describe this to me. Tell me what this reminds you of. And she said, it reminds me of going to my grandma's house, and I would get those when I would stay at my grandmother's house, and I would eat those at my grandmother's house. And she said, okay, so let's remember your grandmother and tap out what this represents to you, feeling loved and whole at your grandmother's house. So they ran through the tapping sequence, and then she opened it up and she said, do you want this? And she goes, no, it smells like plastic. And she said, can I throw it away? And the woman said, no, because that's wasting food and that's not okay. So she said, let's tap through wasting food. So they tapped through wasting food. And then she said, do you want this? And the woman said, no, I don't want it. She said, can I throw it away? And the woman said, yes, you can throw it away. So the therapist threw it in the garbage. And the woman just stood there staring over the ice cream, looking at it, going, that was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. So then I started doing some research, and I watched some videos. It's now removed off the line. I had a link on my blog to it, but it was removed. And I think it was probably that this woman, she smoked cigarettes, and this tapping therapist did the tapping on her, and she no longer smoked cigarettes. And they showed her a couple months later in the seminar learning to become a tapping therapist, and she had never smoked again. And it was an emotional thing that she was tied to this. And there was another one where there was a woman who was afraid of rodents. They tapped out her fear of these rodents, and they showed her later she was petting a rodent. They had a pet mouse or something, or a rat in a cage, and she's like, I don't feel any fear anymore. So I was like, okay, there must be something to this tapping thing, but I hadn't seen any results from the time that I did it. So I thought, can't hurt. We're going to try it. So I looked up some videos on YouTube, and there was there was a little girl tapping, and there was a lot of them. There was a lot of tapping videos on YouTube, and there was somebody doing it in their bedroom on the camera, and I was like, okay, that's distracting. It was just like really sloppy and messy. And then there was a guy standing in his kitchen, and he literally had knives behind him, and he had an accent. So I liked his voice, but this is what it sounded like. Okay, now we're going to tap out this thing, and we're going to get rid of it, and we're going to be all done with this. And it was so high energy, and he's got these knives in the background. I was like, oh, that's a little stressful for me. And most of the tapping sites are the exactly same. And so I was like, I'm just going to keep looking until I find one that's not stressful. I mean, like the guy really was like, oh. So I thought, okay, that's not the one for me. And so I found a site where the guy had some videos, and he looped it. So he just showed, because I wanted to learn the tapping points where you tap on the meridians. And then the way that they do this is EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique is the name of the thing, and somebody came up with it. I don't know how, but I was like, oh, they're brilliant. I get it. It's the tapping points for the meridians. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. And so they have a script that they use, and so I watched this guy's video, and I looped it, and I started tapping out the emotion with the ice cream. So I thought, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try tapping out my cravings for ice cream. Now, at that point, I was buying a couple half gallons of ice cream a week, and my kids were eating it with me every time I would work on this family history stuff. I mean, I brought some of it home. I had bins everywhere, and I'm sorting. And at that point, I had consolidated what was at my sister's and was working on lesser crazy amounts. And I've been working on it for years, so that's not unheard of. I still have a bunch of stuff I'm working on. But so I was at home, and we had ice cream one night, and the next day my daughter came home. I was getting dinner ready or something, and she said, oh, can I have some ice cream? And I said, yeah, go for it. We're not going to eat dinner for a while. I still got to finish it and put it in the oven. It's going to be a few hours. So so the night before, we had eaten ice cream. I got this stuff for my sister. I researched it. I did the tapping, releasing myself from this craving of ice cream. And I released also in the script for my kids as well. You can release things for your entire line. If you've created them, you can unwind them for everybody or tap them out for everybody. And that's kind of a different concept, a different story. And I'll probably share that a little bit later. But so I tapped out this ice cream craving that I had. And so next day, my daughter comes home, asks for ice cream. She gets the exact same cartons of ice cream that we'd had the night before, opens them up, serves herself a bowl, takes a bite, and goes, this doesn't taste good. Now it's the exact same boxes. If it had been a new box, I would have thought something was wrong. But I literally had my back to her. I was peeling potatoes at the sink, and my mouth dropped open. She literally said the exact same thing that the woman in the thing that I had read the night before said. She's like, this doesn't taste good. It doesn't smell good. Do I have to eat it? And I'm like, no, you don't have to eat the ice cream. And she goes, I wonder if her sister, she said, so-and-so would want it. And I'm like, well, you can go and ask her. Well, nobody came and got it, and I didn't want to eat it, so I threw it away. And I thought, that was immediate. Like, that was overnight. Literally, this craving that I had for ice cream was gone overnight. So I didn't continue buying it. The ones that were in there literally had crystals on them and whatever, and I think I threw them away later because nobody ate them after that. So skip forward. I'm telling somebody this about tapping later, and I said, it's weird. Like, we used to eat it all the time, and now we don't eat it. Now, later I did eat it, just different kinds. I like different kinds of whatever, and I crave different things at different times because you will crave certain things if your body needs them. But for this amount of time, I still had 3 kids at home at that point, and we weren't eating it anymore. And so I was telling somebody this story, and my daughter came up to me after I talked to the person, and we were not a lot longer with them, and they're like, you ruined it. And I said, what do you mean? She said, we used to go out for shakes every night with my friends, and one night I just didn't want to go anymore. They didn't taste good. It didn't smell good. And so I stopped going with them. So I never went back. And I said, was it about this time? And they said, yeah, it was. And I said, sorry. So I wanted to know what my emotional tie was to it. I didn't have to know to tap it out. I tapped it out and it was gone. All of our cravings and all of our need for that was gone. It was like some kind of, I wanted to know. So how you can figure out what it is, and I learned this through over years working on people, is a word association technique. So I usually say to the person, what's the first word that comes to your mind when you think of whatever it is? So like I was working on a girl when I was in massage school. She said, every time I eat a hamburger, I get euphoric. And I said, well, what's your first memory? So you can either word associate or you can go to your first memory. Now, if the person's kind of an intuitive person, they can usually get to the memory without having to word associate. If the person is not very open and emotionally, and they're kind of a closed off person, they might have to do word association. So this woman was pretty good. So I just had to word associate. And I was like, what's your first memory of this, when I say hamburger? And she said, Canada. And I said, when you think of Canada, what's your first memory that comes up? And she said, ranch. And I said, ranch. And she said, grandpa. And I said, grandpa. And she said, the cattle roundup. And when I said cattle roundup, she goes, oh. And she had, when she was growing up, they would go every fall to help round up the cattle. And when they had rounded up all the cattle, they would butcher a calf or whatever, and then they would have a big cookout. And they would all have hamburger, a big cookout once they had I don't remember if it was rounding them up or branding them or whatever it was. The family was always together, and they would always have a big cookout afterwards. So every time she ate a hamburger, she would get euphoric. And I said, as long as you have something tied to something else, you're going to crave it or want it, or you're substituting that item for the feeling, like they get tied together. So she was able to associate why she had that craving for hamburgers, or why she got euphoric when she ate a hamburger. So you can tap out the connection between the two so that you can have the feeling of and the memory of the event without having to have that thing tie you to it. That's why people will hoard things, because they have emotional ties to that thing, or it brings back memories to a fun event rather than remembering that event, and they put that emotion tied to a thing. So as I learned to do the word association, it made it easier for people to get to the item that they needed to let go or figure out why. Hold on, my daughter's walking in. I'm going to say hi to her for a second. Hi, I'm back. Sorry about that. So I was talking about why I wanted to figure out why I was craving that ice cream. So I've learned about word association through that time frame, and so I started to ask myself, okay, when I think about ice cream and nuts and bananas, and you have to know, I've never liked sundaes. I've never liked chocolate syrup. I've never liked necessarily nuts on ice cream or something. So for me to crave that item was a weird thing, because I've never really liked sundaes. So I started word associating backwards with mint ice cream and things, and I got back to family. And when I turned 11, when I turned 11, we lived downtown in a major city, and there was an ice cream place near us that served ice cream in a little sink. It's like a kitchen sink kind of looking tray, and it had, I don't know, I think 21 scoops of ice cream in this tray. It had bananas, it had nuts, it had chocolate syrup, it had mint ice cream. And it was something like the kitchen sink or something was the name of this. And I'm one of 8 children, and I'm in the middle of these 8 children. And so my older brothers left to serve as missionaries while I was still quite young. And when one went out, before he came back, another brother went out. And before that brother came back, another brother went out. And then I went to New Zealand as an exchange student. My sister got married while I was gone. My brother got married while I was gone. So when I came back from that, basically the last time my family was ever together in a family unit was that birthday. That was the last time all of us were together celebrating something fun. And it was my birthday, and I got to pick where we went for this ice cream, and we all ate out of this big sink thing, and we all shared it together. And so what I realized was I wanted my family to help me with my mom's stuff. I wanted them to all be there to support me in that. I wanted them to help me get it done so it could be off of the to-do list for me. And my siblings have never been really supportive of helping me with my mom's stuff that way. They just kind of don't want to deal with it because my mother saved a lot of stuff. But it's all really cool history stuff, so I'm grateful she did it, but it was very overwhelming to have to go through and sort and organize. And there's still a lot to do, but that's why I craved the ice cream. I was craving every night when I was working on this stuff. I wanted support from my family, and that was the last time I felt supported by all of my entire family, was that moment in my life. After that, everybody went their own ways and did their own things and got married, and I moved to the East Coast for 10 years. And when I came back, it was very spread out. So that was my issue. That was what that ice cream and the mint and the bananas and everything represented to me, because it wasn't something I normally ate. It wasn't something that I normally even liked. But that's the combination that I needed to have every night when I was working on that project. And so there was an emotional tie for me with that ice cream. And once I tapped it out, that was gone. And I no longer had to have that mixture of ice cream and every night. And I could find other ways to feel supported and have things be unified, not doing it that way. And so, what I'm sharing this for is you don't have to know what the thing is to tap it out. But sometimes you need to know so you can forgive someone. It's very hard to let something go if you're holding emotions, really strong emotions for that person or against that person. So what you have to do is sometimes get what to the issue is, and then deal with the emotions, and then you can let it go. So as I work with people, I typically just say, what's your first memory of blank? Whatever the thing is. I'll use, let me see. Some of them are uncomfortable when they come up. If somebody's having a problem conceiving, or if somebody's having a problem like somebody's been raped, or those kind of things, it's uncomfortable for them to talk about with a therapist. So what I have learned with, and I shouldn't say therapist, it's because I'm not a therapist, and it doesn't have anything to do with therapy. It's just a physical release thing from emotions that are stuck. So, but I don't know what else to call it. It's just a word association. So I don't want to know what their trauma was. I don't want anything to do with rehashing their trauma. I don't want to know anything about the emotional stuff. This helps get rid of physical ailments as well as emotional ailments. So when somebody calls me as a nurse and says, hey, I'm having a problem with, for example, this week, a friend called and said, hey, I have a kidney infection. I've been taking the stuff to fix it, and it's not going away. And what do I do? And, when I've shared, some people can't take antibiotics. Some people take antibiotics and it doesn't work. Some people have continued problems. Even with medical treatments, they still have problems. So when they're stuck, I will share with them how tapping has helped me. And if they choose to look it up and do it on a video, that's great. But that's their freedom. They're free to do that, and they're free to do that. So, or not do it. It doesn't matter to me. It's not my problem. So typically what I'll say is, I don't need to know what the word is that you're associating with, and I don't need to know what the memory is that you've tied it to or associated it with. Just say, I've got it. I know what it is. And when they've got it, it doesn't matter. So if I shared that example of the car running the red light at the beginning and getting hit by their mom's bleeding or whatever, this trauma. So to get to that, you just think about what you're doing. There was a woman who I was sitting next to in a conference, and she was sharing how she's never been able to lose weight. And I said, well, what are you waiting for? No matter how many diets and pills or anything she's taken, exercise, whatever, she's never been able to lose weight. And there are physical things that can have you gain weight and things you need to, do and fix. But if it's everything else is level and you just can't seem to let it go, a lot of times there's an emotional tie, and weight is what are you waiting for? And so I just say, think about your weight. What do you ask yourself? What are you waiting for? And sometimes they'll word associate, and I'll just say, when you think of that word, when you think of that word, when you think of that word, what comes up? And so it's the same for any illness. It's the same for any ailment. You just, what are you thinking? What makes you think of that, or what comes up when you think of that? And then you just word associate until you can get back to whatever the memory was. And sometimes you don't need a word associate. I'll just say, what are you waiting for? And some people pop right out. Oh, I never thought about it that way. I'm waiting for my husband to get a job, or I'm waiting for my kids to help me. I'm waiting for my ex to leave me alone. I'm waiting for whatever it is. There's always something we're waiting for, So that's how the word association works. You can word associate to get back to it, or you can just think of what it is. So if your lower back is hurting, I can't tell you how many people have asked me for help with their lower back. They'll say, oh my gosh, my lower back, I'm taking these pills, but it's not working, because as a massage therapist, I would do massage on their back. And then I would just say, well, where are you not feeling supported? And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, the lower back is usually not feeling supported. There's a couple of good books that talk about the things that we store in our bodies. Louise Hay has a really good book, You Can Heal Your Body. And there's books, I think hers is the one you can just open it and it will say like a rash on the body, and it will say irritation under the skin. So like you're irritated with something or someone. So you're erupting. It's emotions that are erupting because you can't get them out. So especially like cold sores, if people get cold sores, that's usually they want to say something and they can't get it out. And so it erupts on their lips. Literally, it's erupting on their lips because they can't say what they want to say to the person they need to say it to, whether they're passed away or whether they just emotionally, the person can't handle it, or they just don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. So they hold those feelings in and then they erupt. And so, so there's this book that's wonderful, and it talks about all the different emotions that can cause different problems, like the kidneys is fear, and the anger is the liver and the gallbladder, and lower back is not feeling supported. But if you need to know more than that, so the lower back, I say, when I'm working on them, I'll say, well, where are you not feeling supported? Or if they're having shoulder pain, is specifically one side or the other. So the right side of the body is masculine and the left side of the body is feminine. So if their right shoulder is in pain, I'll say, what burden are you carrying for a male in your life? Your son or your husband or your father, or you're carrying somebody's burden. And then they'll go, oh, I didn't think about it, but my son, blah, 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 and I had to do this for him and that. And so once you start looking at it and you know those few keys, right side of the body is taking and the left side is giving. So women are usually more giving and men are receiving, or whatever, that kind of a thing. So there's different cues that you can take from the body. Eyes are not wanting to see clearly. If you have problems seeing, I don't want to see this, I don't want to see that, and your eyes might get worse. Or a lot of people who have been through a trauma and seen a trauma that will go blind and have eye issues. So there's a lot of things that can be connected to your health through that. And tapping helps you release the emotions. So, for example, this is one that I use because I've seen it many times. Say somebody's in a football game and they're in high school and they're the lead guy or whatever, and their girlfriend dumps them and they're playing the game. Their left knee will go out. They'll feel like they took the feet out from underneath them. They felt like they got blindsided in the game. They got knocked out in the game. Every time that they feel like something like that's going to happen again in their life, their knee will go out again. So as they're trying to move forward with the girl, she dumped them, so they couldn't move forward that way. So that trick knee, as long as they haven't let go and forgiven that girl and that energy is stored there, it's kind of like a magnet in the middle of the room. If there's no magnet in the room and the dust is coming, it will just settle all over the room. If there's a magnet or electrical thing, it's a draw, all the energy will draw to that magnet. And so I explain it like that energy, that anger and that frustration or that revenge, whatever it is, that energy will draw situations to it until it's dissipated. Once the magnet's gone, then those situations don't happen because there's no draw to it. So it's kind of like the little kid who's in the cafeteria and there's 300 people at this camp in the cafeteria, and a bee comes in, and the one kid that's afraid of bees goes, oh, I'm going to get stung by a bee. And then the kid gets stung by a bee because he had the fear. That fear and that energy draws him in. You know, I've heard several people with swimming in the ocean for years, never had a problem. They have a friend come with them that, am I going to get stung by a jellyfish? Well, of course that person gets stung by a jellyfish because that energy and the fear draws it in. So it's like we create what we talk about. We create what we put our energies into. So this is all it's like, I can't explain one part of it without talking about all of it. So it seems very weird and very out there, but it all connects. When you've worked on people for so long, you see over and over and over again. I have no doubt when somebody's having lower back pain, 99 times it's not feeling supported in their life. And most of the time it's financially. But not always. Sometimes it's not. But most of the time it's a financial, not feeling supported financially for some reason. So, and shoulders as burdens, and they always connect. And so that's why that book is really good. I mean, not everything is in that book by Louise Hay, but most things are in the book. So, you can just kind of look it up and go, okay, this is the issue I'm having. How am I going to connect that with this? So a rash erupts. Who is irritating me? Who is making my skin boil, so to speak? And then you can look at what that is and then ask yourself those questions, and it will help you put the two together so that you can then tap it out. So with all that emotion and talking about how to get to the emotion and how to figure it out, word association, think about that. And whatever word pops in your mind, think about that. Whatever word pops in your mind, think about that. And that will help you get back to the emotion that's stuck inside that area. So when I've worked on people with knees, hips, ankles, it's always moving forward. They're afraid to move forward in whatever. One time I was on a dating website, and it was after my divorce, and it's so funny. Every time I would go on a date, I would trip going in to meet the guy. And it took me a while to figure it out. I'm like, yeah, I'm having fear. And there was a guy that I kind of liked, but it made me nervous because I picked somebody that wasn't the greatest person the first time, and I was like, I don't want to do that again. And I literally was so nervous, I fell on my face. I had stumbled and I hadn't figured out that I was having this fear, and I tripped, and then I didn't figure it out, and then I literally fell on flat. And I was like, oh wow, I should have figured out that I was carrying this fear a long time before now, that I didn't have to fall on my face to figure it out. So usually those kind of moving forward things, getting married is usually a hip issue. So the bigger the issue, the more it moves up the body. So it can be like an ankle, a stub of toe because you don't feel like you fit in. or, if you're dating somebody and you're not unsure about their feelings, you can like hurt your ankle, sprain your ankle. You're going on a hike with your buddies and you don't feel like you're fitting in or something, you can sprain your ankle. Or if you're having a fear of what they're doing and you don't really want to join in what they're doing, you can sprain your ankle. Or knee is commitment, not wanting to submit. Hips is moving forward in a big way. So they just, different things are stored differently. I think of Rush Limbaugh and how he went deaf. And I don't think he really wanted to hear all those opinions everybody was sharing with him because it was frustrating to him. And so you almost think, did he create that for himself? Going deaf, not consciously, but subconsciously, you just, after a while, I have a couple daughters that needed glasses going through the divorce. And I think they just didn't want to see it. They didn't want to see the situation. So we create these things, and whether you believe me or not, it doesn't really matter. But if you have something in your life that's stuck and you're not moving forward, this is a good way to look at it and maybe be able to let it go. So with all that, tapping. So I've used this for years with my kids and my family, and it works great. And after that ice cream thing, they didn't have too many questions. Now, it's hard to look at certain situations because it was painful going through it the first time. It's going to be painful looking at it to let it go the second time. Sometimes, by the grace of God, you don't need to know what it is to let it go. But if there is someone that you need to forgive, it's very hard to let go of that energy without forgiving. So what I usually do is as I get to what the issue is, and it's somebody that's offended me or hurt me in some way or hurt one of my kids, I put them inside a box in my head. Now, at first I would just have them in front of me talking, but then they would argue back in my head. So I decided that the best way to nullify that argument was I put them in a box. They can hear me, but they can't see me. And I can see through the box, so I can see them and they can hear me, but they can't see me and I can't hear them. So they can argue with me all day long and I don't hear it because it's not about them. It's not about that. If we are not heard, we cannot let it go. If we haven't been able to forgive and move on, we can't let it go. So when I've been talking to somebody and they had a really traumatic, say, I have a really dear friend who was asking for some help in a situation. She was raped by someone in authority over her when she was 12. It was a coach of one of her teams. And she was really stuck in a hard place. And she wasn't able to move forward with her life and her family and having kids and things. So sometimes you have to be heard in order to let it go and to forgive. And it's very hard to forgive if you haven't been heard. So this is how this came up, because some people said, I just cannot let it go. And I said, well, you can't go to that person and have a conversation with them while they're living. That's not going to happen. But you can talk to their spirit while you are alive. And in your mind, you can put this person in this box and you can tell them all the things that they have done to hurt you over the years and all the things that one situation has created for you. You can't trust people. You can't be around men alone. You can't have children. You can't move forward. You can't be at peace in your life. So by creating this space where they could put the person and be heard, it allowed them to move forward. So, and she's very happy in her life now. This was many years ago. So by putting that person, you can get back to the trauma, the event or whatever, but if you put the person in a box and you tell them how that situation has affected your life and how it's paralyzed you for so long, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a big traumatic event like that. It can be just a little thing. I put myself in a box all the time and say, when you chose to not move forward or get past this, or you haven't forgiven that person, you halted your own progression, and I need to forgive myself and let that go so I can move forward. So it's not just other people that you're angry at or you're hurt by or whatever. It's yourself as well. It's anybody that you has stopped your progression. And we stop our own progression all the time. So when I'm stuck on something and I'm not moving forward, I have to put myself in a box and have a little conversation with myself so that I can move forward. So it's not always a negative thing. This is a healing thing, way to be heard and let it go. And I'm not telling any of you to do this. I'm just saying this is what I've had to do when my friends have asked me, before. So I just put myself or whoever I need to forgive in a box, and I tell them how that situation that happened has caused me to not be able to move forward. And then I invite Christ. I don't know. It can be whoever your higher power is, your higher being. I believe in Christ, and I believe I have a Heavenly Father who loves me, and I will invite them there, and I'll say, so-and-so, you did this, and it kept me from moving forward, and I need to forgive you, because as long as I don't forgive you, I can't move forward. Now, I don't care whether you forgive me or you let it go. That's up to you. But I am choosing to move forward. I'm choosing to let this go, and I'm choosing to move and be happy in my life. And I forgive you, and I am letting you go. I am severing all ties to this event and this situation, and I am moving forward. And then I hand the entire box, and I tell them, I hope you can let this go. I hope you're ready to move forward. I hope you're willing to move on. And here's Christ. He's here. You can talk to him, or your Heavenly Father, or whoever you believe in. You can talk to them, and Buddha, anybody. It doesn't matter, as long as you are heard and you're able to let it go. So I say, take this person, and I give that box and person and all to Christ. And I say, thank you for taking them. And hopefully they'll decide to talk to you and work through it. But I am done, and I am not going to deal with this problem anymore. Now, and I thank him for that. So when I talk about tapping and thanking him and healing light, you know where that comes from. So I give the whole problem to Christ, and I give that person and the situation to Christ. And then this is the really important part. If you give a plant to your neighbor and you go and water that plant every day, did you give the plant to your neighbor? No. It's still yours. Your neighbor's it's at your neighbor's house. If you talk to that person, you work through it, and you forgive them, and you let it go, and you give it to Christ, you cannot water that plant. You cannot think about it anymore. You can't tell stories about it anymore. You can't play the victim anymore. You can't share that anymore. You can't worry about that anymore. You can't lose sleep over that anymore. Once you give it to Christ, it's his. It's not your plant to water anymore. Let him take care of it. Let him worry about consequences. There's not being vindictive. It only hurts you. That person is half the time, the bully that hurt you doesn't even know you exist. They don't care. They've moved on. So the only person that hurts holding on to is you. So when I give it to Christ, I give it to Christ. It's not mine to worry about. It's not mine to water. I don't have to think about it anymore, and I move through it. People will always say, how come your kids are such good, kind, loving kids, having gone through this horrible divorce and courts and social workers and a guardian ad litem and mediators? And I'm like, because they've learned to let it go. They don't need to be in the victim status. They don't need to tell people the story. That's not what defines them. They have forgiven and moved on. Doesn't mean you let the abuser in your life still. It doesn't mean you open yourself up to be punished or hurt anymore. It just means that you have moved on and let it go. And you don't need to dwell on it. So once you give it to Christ, it's not yours to worry about anymore. So hold on a second. Hi, back. I wanted to ask one of my daughters if it was okay that I shared a situation with you that she had. Princess 5 had a rollover and was severely injured. And she was by herself when she was driving. And she loved driving before that. After that experience, she no longer wanted to drive. And she was graduating high school. She was heading off to college. It was July 4th, and we were driving on a highway. And she was crying, saying she didn't want to go to college. She didn't feel ready. She had had so much trauma with the rollover, and her senior year was not her best time because she couldn't do drill. She couldn't participate in a lot of functions because she didn't have a use of her arm. And she just felt like she maybe was going to postpone college because it was terrifying her to have to drive and be driving alone and living in a different place where she'd have to drive. And she just, that whole driving to college thing was terrifying to her. And I was driving to a family function, and it was far away. And so I'm driving on the highway, and she is having a complete meltdown while I'm driving. And I said to her she needed to tap it out. And I said, I know sometimes it gets emotional when you're looking at what the issue is. You know what works. You need to let the accident go and your fear of moving forward and your fear of driving go so that it doesn't inhibit you when you're a mom and in your life. Everybody has accidents. It could have happened to me. But the problem is you're letting it keep you from moving forward and having joy in your life. She's sobbing. I look over and I'm talking to her, and I look down and I am speeding like 10 over the speed limit. And I immediately took my foot off the gas and tapped the brake. But by the time I did that, a police officer was pulling me over. Now, you know, on holidays, there's a lot of police officers out, and I don't get pulled over very often. I try not to speed like that. So I was already slowing down, but by the time I recognized that I was going fast, so we pull over on this major highway, and this police officer, it is hot. It is so hot outside, and he's in full uniform. And he walks up to the side of the car. Do you know you're speeding? And I said, yes, I did. And this is why. And my daughter's obviously been crying and is still upset. And he was a Native American gentleman. And I said, I am so sorry. She's heading off to college. She had this rollover a year ago. She's nervous to drive. I told her I was upset because she's upset and crying. And I'm so sorry. If you need to give me a ticket, because I was speeding. I was upset for her, and I got upset, and I was speeding. And he talked to her for almost a full hour in the window, dripping sweat in the window, and told her his story about both of his parents were medicine men. His grandparents, I'm sorry, both of his grandparents were medicine people in the tribe that he was from. And he told her some things that were really cool stories about his life, and some ties that we had in our life with him that we found out as we were just talking. And he talked about how they tap emotions out in the Native American culture in their tribe. And he learned that from his medicine men, women, grandparents. And I looked at my daughter. Now, I hadn't mentioned anything about tapping to him, but he said, when you're feeling emotional, this is what we do in our tribe. And it was tapping two of the points that you do in tapping. And he said that was like handed down through the generations in his tribe. So I don't know about all Native Americans, but in his tribe. And so I looked at my daughter and I said, I was literally telling you needed to tap this out when he pulled us over. And I thought, what are the chances of anybody on this planet pulling us over and knows about tapping and sharing that with her right at that moment where she was trying to decide to not go to college and let fear stop her? And so that is a really cool witness to me that, yes, tapping does work, and there are more than just Eastern medicine that believe in it, because it's Native American. So she said I could share that with you, and that is absolutely truth. She can testify to that. And I was so grateful to that officer. He didn't end up giving me a ticket, and he spent all that time to to calm her fears and to share his knowledge with her. And it worked because she was willing to tap it out and work through it. And obviously she graduated college this last year and she's heading out as a missionary. So tapping does work. It just, if you don't understand it, you explain it, do some research. But I know it works. I've seen it over and over and over and over again. And just this week, one of my dear friends called me with some health problems and said, will you please come do that thing that you do? And I'm like, yeah, but you have to be willing to let it go. Some people just can't seem to let go of their emotions that easily. They have a really hard time letting things go because it feels like it's out of their control. So you have to be willing to look at it and be willing to figure out what it is or just let it go. Sometimes people just like to hold on to things. They feel like they're losing part of themselves if they let it go. So when they have that problem, when people have that problem, I tell them that there's a shelf in their brain somewhere and when emotions start to come up. So if we start talking about something, and this is a good example, when you're a 2-year-old and somebody takes some candy from you, that's a big deal. You get really emotional and you get really upset. If I'm 50 and somebody takes candy from me, I don't care at all. It doesn't bother me at all. Go ahead, take all you want. I've got tons. I don't ever eat it. So when you're so somebody takes candy from you when you're 2. When you're in school, somebody takes candy from you, you get really upset. When you're an adult and you're sitting at your desk and you look for your pen or your stapler and you get hugely upset because somebody took your stuff and people are like, dude, it was a stapler. But the point is, it's not the stapler. They don't even care about the stapler. What they're reliving is this incident when they were 2 that they weren't able to let go of. They didn't even know what was causing it. Like me and the ice cream. I didn't know why I was craving ice cream for those months, but subconsciously I did because I was trying to connect with my family. So what happens is you start talking to this person about, okay, well, think about the stapler. What comes up when you think about the stapler? And they're like, a fort. And I'll say, okay, think about the fort. And they're like, my brother. And I'll say, okay, think about your brother. And they'll say, my birthday. And I'll say, okay, think about your birthday. And they'll go, bag of candy. And I'll say, okay, bag of candy. And they're like, oh, my brother took this bag of candy, whatever. But as they're getting to that, they'll start getting emotional. You can glassy-eyed and they'll be upset. And I'll say, take that emotion. You're reacting as a small child would to this situation. So this is why they overreact about the stapler, because they're dealing with this emotion that they stuck with over here. So when emotion starts to come up, people say, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm uncomfortable with what you're doing. I want to stop. They are uncomfortable because they're reacting as a 2-year-old would react to a situation rather than a 50-year-old. So I had to come up with a way for my kids to let go of the emotion that they were carrying when they were trying to work through it. So I would say, take the emotion that you're feeling. I know you're really, really angry at somebody right now. Take the emotion and stick it somewhere on a shelf in your mind. So I'd have them create a playroom with a shelf, and they put this emotion that they're feeling up on the shelf. I say, okay, now that emotion's up there, nobody's taking it. It's yours. You can take that emotion back anytime you want. It's there if you want it. Now that the emotion is safe and it's taken out of the way, then they can look at the situation behind it. As soon as they put that emotion on the shelf, I'll say, okay, think about the fort. And they'll think about the fort. I'm okay, now what comes up? And they're like, oh, I was in this fort with my brother and we had this bag of candy and he took all my candy and ate it and I didn't get any and I was so mad. The stapler had nothing to do with it, really. They were still reacting and hurt that somebody stole their stuff, and it was something that was really important to them. And so instead of handling it like a normal adult would, they were handling it like a child would. And I know every one of you out there is thinking of a situation where somebody went off the handle about something really stupid and insignificant. And that is because there's emotion stuck somewhere with that situation. So as you're looking at these things, if you have an emotion that comes up and you get terrified and you don't want to really look at it, what's behind it, just stick it somewhere in your mind, stick it on a shelf, and then you're able to look at what's underneath it. You can word associate and figure out what it is that's causing you to be stuck or have this health problem here or not be able to forgive that person there or whatever. So all of these little tricks are things I've come up with to help my kids over time let go of the emotion that's stuck, let go of and forgive the person who's offended them in their life or hurt them or used them as a tool to get to somebody else, so they felt like they were being used by this person that's supposed to love them. These are all ways that we've been able to get around and help them get through and work through that emotion without having complete meltdowns. So if you're feeling panicky, put it up on the shelf. If you're feeling fear, put it up on the shelf. Do it in a safe place where you're not feeling any threat whatsoever, and then just give it, and then have Christ there and talk to the person you need to, work through it. So those are all tricks that have helped my kids be able to get to the issue, what it is, take out the emotion, look at it logically as age appropriately, and then forgive that person, talk to that person, tell them what they did using them or not taking care of them, not making them feel safe has done in their lives. And then they can give it to the Savior and forgive and move on. And then don't water it. Once you've tapped it out and you've let it go and given it to Christ, don't water it. So once Christ takes it, when we're doing this tapping, he always gives you something back. And I don't know if any of you have seen the show Quantum Leap, but in the beginning of the show, there's this white light that comes through his head or whatever, and then it just kind of explodes out of his body. And that's what I picture. And I'll explain to you why this is important. For years, I would just help him get to what the issue was, and then I thought I'd help him let it go, but it kept coming up, and I couldn't figure out why. When the situation would happen again, why it would continue to come up. And what I learned was, if you're walking through your grass and there's a rock and you take the rock out of your grass, there's a hole. Now, rain comes and you didn't fill up that hole. Water gets in that hole and it gets muddy. But if you take that rock out and you throw a little handful of grass seeds and a little bit of dirt, that exact same rain that comes, that exact same water, exact same lawn, everything's the same except you filled in the hole. The rain creates mud and murky and muck. The other one creates beautiful grass or flowers or whatever you plant there. It will grow beautiful things. It's the exact same rain, the exact same emotional trauma. So what I learned was, when you take out that negative energy from the body, you have to put something positive back in its spot. So I used the healing light of Christ. You can use whatever you feel you need to use. Whatever being you want to use, whatever thing you want to use. If you just want to put yourself back positively, I don't know. You do what you do. But for me, what has worked is when I give Christ this thing and he takes it and atones for it, I just picture him handing me this healing light of Christ, and then I just see it flowing through me, filling up all those negative areas where that negative was taken out of. Wherever I had a negative stored throughout my body with that event. So it could be stored in my eyes because I didn't want to see it. It could be stored in my memory as a trigger would be the sound of the song that was playing, or the smell of the thing I was eating when the trauma happened, the color of the car or the situation, red blood can trigger you. So wherever I take out those negatives that are stored with that memory or that situation, I put the healing light of Christ back in. So once you tap out the negative, you always need to tap in a positive. So that's something that I've learned through trial and error as well. So I'm just going to explain tapping for a second, but I need to go grab a drink, so I'll be right back. I'm back, sorry. I took a Sudafed kind of a thing. It's draining my sinuses, so I just need to take a drink. But so tapping is like, if you have a document, you want to write a document, and you don't have Microsoft Word or whatever program you have on your computer that runs and opens those documents, you can't read the document. So if you don't write the program and write the document in that program and have that program on your computer, you can't read that document. So there's two parts to tapping. One is you're writing the program that you're going to tap out. And then the tapping is like the Microsoft Word or whatever Word document or program, your PDF, whatever it is, whatever Adobe, I don't know, whatever you're running, that's what the tapping is. And then at the beginning, before you tap, you have to write the document. So the document is going to be something like, so let's say, with my daughters, let's use my daughter's car accident as an example. So we talked about it. We put up on the shelf the things that were causing her fear. We worked through forgiving herself for the rollover. She put herself in a box. She handed it to Christ. She's not going to have that fear anymore. Every time she has any kind of fear, she's just going to hand it to Christ. She forgave herself. But we need to tap out the emotions that were with it. Whatever song she was listening to on the radio, whatever she was, eating, or if she was whatever, the color of the car, going off the road, flipping 5 times, landing, the ambulance ride, the trauma, not being able to use her arm for a year, all of those things, she needed to put them in. So we talk about it and figure out what the issues are just by word association. She puts them on the shelf in her mind, and then we tap everything that's on the shelf at the end. When she's figured out all of the things that she's afraid of and let them all go and forgiven everything she needs to forgive, then we tap it out. So we have to write the document. So there's a script for this, and it's on my blog. And if you go on my blog, thesecretisgratitude.com, and you go down about halfway on the left, there's a bunch of pages. It's not actually written in the format of the blog posts. It's actually on pages that are on my blog. And it's called Tapping Script is what I think it's called. So look on there for Tapping Script. And that's the script that I've come up with over the years and added things, because you can release it for your family. And sometimes it's something that's handed down through your mother might have created it and you don't want it anymore. So you can tap it out for your situation and your family. And, so there's a lot of things in there. So some people have been ritually abused. There's some programs in there there's some wording in there for that. So you may not understand all of the wording in the script. There's a ton of scripts out there. You can use any one you feel comfortable with. This is the one that has worked best for my family because I've been able to add things to it as I learn. This has been going on for 17 years now, maybe even 20 years that I have added all this information into the script that we use. So the script that I use this is like the document, and I'm filling in the blanks. So the blanks would be everything that we just discussed about my daughter's rollover and everything. So I would say something like this. So this is the input meridian. So this is the heart meridian. The heart meridian comes here and it goes up and through the heart and ring finger. So the heart meridian comes up here and then it comes back down here. So we're tapping it in on the heart is the center of it all, right? So we're tapping this in, and we're writing the Word document that we're going to tap. And the tapping is like the whole program. So you tap right here on the fleshy part of the hand, and this is what we say. Even though we have this issue of, and then whatever you're working on. So for her, it would have been fear of moving forward, fear of driving a car, fear of rolling over, fear of accidents, fear of not being able to move forward, fear of being on my own, fear of driving by myself. And you can tap all of those in. So that's the document that you're writing. And then the script part is what you would say after that. So even though we have these issues of this, we love and accept ourselves deeply and completely and forgive those who helped create it, including ourselves on all layers, level, timeline, generational line, DNA, parallel, simultaneous, miasm, and any other layer, level of programming we may not be aware of. And I say it in the form of a prayer, in the name of Jesus Christ, amen, because Christ is my Savior and Redeemer. I believe that He's my Savior and Redeemer, and my children believe that. So I say it as a prayer because I'm giving it to Him. And I told you how I picture Him, and I hand the whole thing to Him, and it's not my problem to worry about, and I'm not going to water it anymore. I'm giving it to Him, and I don't have to deal with it anymore. So that's how I tap it, and those are the things that I say in my script. So if you want to use that script, feel free to print it out. It's on my blog. If not, find another one. There's plenty of tapping sites out there. There's plenty of YouTube videos on tapping. That's great. Use one of their scripts. But this one has been very, very effective for me and my family. Then you tap. I'm going to do a demonstration really quickly on how to tap. And then I'm going to make another video where I just say the script and leave it blank for a second for you to fill in. And then I'll do a tapping, and then I'll do a second tapping so that you can learn those tapping spots without having to rewind it or send it back to 0. So the tapping, what happens is you think there's layers of the subconscious and conscious, right? So as you're tapping, I'll tell you what, you're tapping. These are the meridians, these are your tapping. And then you're going to tap with your eyes open, which is conscious. You're going to tap with your eyes closed, which is subconscious. You're going to tap while you're humming, which is the creative parts of the brain. You're going to tap while you're counting, which is the analytical parts of your brain. You're going to tap while your eyes are looking straight up and circling one direction and the other direction and looking down and different down, because those connect with different parts of the brain, and you want to tap it out of your conscious, your subconscious, your creative, your reasoning centers. You want to get it out of all of the areas of your conscious and subconscious and all of the meridians of your body. So you want to tap it out, because if your mom died in a car accident and you were there, you would have grief, you would have fear, you would have anger at the person who ran the red light. So you can store things in different parts of your body. And so you can consciously think about, okay, I can forgive them, but those traumatic events get stored. Traumatic events always get stored somewhere. So you can let them out of those different parts of your body by tapping those meridians. So that's why you need to tap all the meridians. And that's why you need to tap while you're conscious and subconscious and reasoning and analytical and sound and smell, because you can be hearing a song, you can smell and you can taste, and you can be angry and you can be sad and you can be fearful all at the same time. So that's why you have to tap on all those different meridians, and open and closed and all those different things will do. So you think about and you're tapping it through all the subconscious layers. So you're going to tap 7 times on every spot that you tap when you're tapping it out and you're tapping it back in. And your subconscious will create things if you don't get it, you kind of like erase it from your subconscious. So you have to get it out of your subconscious, but your subconscious is genuinely positive, so you don't have to tap that part back in. You just have to tap it out of the negative and then put the healing light of Christ back in. And so we only do part of the other tapping, the positive. You don't have to do the subconscious part. There's one little part that you don't have to do at the end of that. So you start tapping and you tap 7 times on every meridian. Okay, so you think about the feeling that you're letting go of and the trauma that you're letting go of. So you think these feelings, 7, these feelings, 7, these feelings, 7, these are gallbladder and other meridians. Okay. The governing and conception vessels were there end and begin here. So 7 here, 7 here. Sorry, somebody's coming to my door. I'll be right back. Hi, I'm back. I'm sorry, I don't even remember what I was talking about, but look, somebody brought me a treat. I will stop the video for that any day. Who doesn't love toffee and chocolate? Anyway, so tapping example. So tap 7 here, 7 here, 7 here, 7 here, 7 here, 7 here, right on the thymus, on the chest, under the arm, kind of like on where the brow line would be. 7 times here, the top of the head, right above your ear, there's kind of a bony prominence you can kind of feel. Tap 7 times there. That's a triple burner. And then the meridians on the end of the fingers. So like 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the ring finger. And then since this is the heart, and then it comes down here, you don't need to do the pinky because you've got the end of the heart meridian already. And then once you've tapped those areas and you're thinking about the thing that you're releasing, you tap on the back of the hand between the 4th and the 5th fingers right there. And you do it with your eyes open, your eyes closed, your eyes open, look down hard right, look down hard left, look straight up, circle one direction, look straight up, circle the other direction, hum, count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hum, take a deep breath, let it all out. I picture Christ in front of me and I say, thank you for taking this from me. I appreciate it. I'm grateful for it. And is there anything you want to tell me? I just close my eyes and kind of ponder for a minute and see if anything comes into my mind. No, I don't think he's actually like talking to me. I just see if there's anything that I need to feel and positive and that he says to me, and then I tell him thank you, and then he hands me this healing ball of light. I picture it going through the top of my head and through my body, and you tap the positive in. Like we're planting the grass seed or the flower seed so that when it rains emotionally, that same rain, beautiful things can grow instead of you getting upset about the same situation that you've had in the past. So you tap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, and you think about the healing light of Christ filling up all those voids, those empty negative voids, and you're tapping them back in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, skip. I'm sorry, you skip the ring finger and you do the pinky. I wasn't thinking correctly. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You skip the ring finger because that's the beginning of the meridian, and you do the pinky, which is the end of the meridian. Sorry, thinking about chocolate. So when you're tapping, 1, 2, 3, skip the ring finger, 5. Then after you do that, you don't have to do the eyes open and eyes closed because the subconscious only deals with the positive and what you've done. So you're just erasing the negatives out. The positives are already there. So there's that. So I'm going to say the script. I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to start another video, and I'm just going to label it script tapping video. Repeat or something like that. And I might just put The Secret is Gratitude in the title or something so you can find it. The Secret is Gratitude script tapping video or something is probably what I'll name it. And that way you can tap in the emotions that you're working on. And then go through I'll do 2 sessions of negative, letting go, and then positive, and then I'll end it so that you can just put that on repeat and get through and let go of anything that comes up and work with it. Once you've done it a few times, you'll know what the tapping sequence is. I could ask any of my kids, they could whip it off fast. They've tapped out enough over the years that they know what the situation is. The script I've added to over the years, so they may need to look at it a couple of times, and I usually am the one to say the script. So if I'm working with someone, my kids or whatever, I say the script and they just tap here. So if you're working with your kid or something, you can just have them tap here and you read or say the script. And I say we, because you are more than just you. You're yourself and I. You're your name. You're a mom. You're a sister. You're a sibling. Whatever it is. So when I say we, I'm talking about all of myself, my kids, my every part of myself, and everything that encompasses. So I never just say I, even though I say even though we. So when I'm doing the script, it's always a we. And when I'm working with my kids, I tap at the same time as well in case I have the same issue that I'm working on with them. And I do it with other people. Like if I'm showing my friends, I tap it just to show them, and then they mirror me. So that's why I say we in the script. So I will turn this one off and start a different one. So if you want to try it, this is the beginning. If somebody doesn't understand tapping, they don't know how to talk, to put somebody in a box, to let it go. This situation works really well with children. If they don't, a shelf doesn't work for a kid, a backpack, because they understand backpacks at an early age from preschool and high school and elementary school. So you can just have them put it in a backpack in their head when they're trying to let go of the emotion, when they're trying to tell you a story about somebody at school that was mean to them or took something that was theirs, or they're upset about something. Have them put it in a backpack and put it on the shelf in their head or something, or just put it by their feet so that you can get the emotion out of the way and then help them tap it out and forgive that person. Kids are very forgiving, and my kids, this was so good for them because they were able to tap it out and forgive and let go and move forward and not let their victimhood as a child of abuse affect where they went in their lives. Because when they don't have an outlet and they don't feel heard and they're stuck in that trauma, they can learn to become victims and need that victim status and get energy and attention from being a victim. When you help them let it go at a small age and they can let it go quickly and easily and forgive that person, they no longer need to talk about it because they've been heard. Once you teach them to put somebody in a box and tell them how it made them feel and how hurt they were, they feel heard, they can then tap it out and let it go, and they no longer, and give it to Christ or whomever you want to have them give it to, then they can move forward and not be stuck. And it was really a blessing in my life to have this way to help my kids forgive those who have abused them or been hurtful to them or spitefully used them. And they were able to let it go. And this has been very beneficial. And I'm not perfect. They're not perfect by any means, but it was a resource to help them get through some of the trauma that they had when they were little. So thank you for watching. The script is on my blog, thesecretisgratitude.com, about halfway down on the pages. Look for the pages list on the left side, and then just click on tapping script, and you can print that out and go through it. Once you know how to tap and you remember the thing, there's several really good tapping websites. If you don't like how I do it and it's not working for you, I'm not offended. Go to somebody else's site. There's some sites that are great. The one thing I will tell you is if you're going to go use somebody else's site, a lot of them skip the triple burner point, which is right here. And when I was doing it, I felt really strongly that I needed to do that site and tap there and add that to the cycle. And then I went later, after I had been using it for a while, I went and looked up, and it's the triple burner point for the meridian for the triple burner. So it was important for whatever reason that was included in the tapping. So if you're going to go to somebody else's website and use their tapping cycle or video, just make sure you add that point in at some point in your tapping so that you get that one covered. That's the only thing that I haven't seen any other one with that on it, but I haven't, after that first time, I haven't looked at a ton of them. I just kept using this one site that I liked that went through it a few times, but then I got it memorized and I made my own script and added to it and everything. So I haven't been on a tapping website in years and years and years. I mean, like a lot of years. So I'm doing this for my friend who asked me to do this. So you don't feel like you're offending me if you don't like it or whatever. Don't write nasty comments. It's not going to help anybody. There's no point. If you don't like it, thumbs up, thumbs down if you like it, or if you don't, it doesn't really hurt me either way. I'm not offended. And, but it's out there for those who are looking for a way to help their kids or themselves through that. So, thanks for watching, and check out my other video. I'll probably link it at the end of this one, but this is going to take me 1.5 years to upload. So my slow internet. So, check that one out when you can. Thanks for watching and have a blessed day.